I'm Brad Power, and this is the Cancer Patient Lab. And we're very honored to have Ezra Cohen with us today. Ezra is someone we've known for a long time. He was very helpful in the Casey Altman hackathon some years ago. He's been an expert in immunotherapies, personalized vaccines, and things of that sort. And as you may know, he's been with Tempest now, Ezra, for a year or so?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. He's based in San Diego. He was associated with UCSD. He's chief medical officer at Tempest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got a very interesting topic for us today, which I think we'll all have fun with, which is how AI is changing the relationship between doctors and patients. And of course, at the Cancer Patient Lab, we're all about empowering patients. And what does that do to doctors? Does empowering patients mean disempowering doctors? I hope not, but we can see what that new relationship looks like. Just a few housekeeping things we always cover at the front. This is for information purposes only. This is not medical advice. So we try to arm patients with information they can take to their doctors to help them in their care. Second, everything is public. So if you're concerned about whatever you might say or your image or your name being used and then it's being made public, you can hide your name, change your name, turn off your image, and don't say anything. And then finally, we are a nonprofit. We are patient-led, all volunteer. And so we'll always appreciate any donations which you might make, which you can do at our website, cancerpatientlab.org. That, I'll turn it over to Ezra. He said he has some slides.
Great. Thanks, Brad, and truly thanks for the invitation. It's nice to be back with this group. And what I've done is I've got about 7 slides just to give you a sense of what Tempest is doing, especially with respect to AI. I purposefully had a provocative title to try and stimulate discussion, and hopefully we'll have a robust discussion after the slides. So let me get right into the presentation, which I believe you should be able to see now. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm getting the thumbs up. All right. So the title is How AI is Shifting the Dynamics of Your Next Doctor Visit. And I think if you've been to a physician recently, you may have seen some of these differences in technologies that can listen in on the conversation and then produce a note, in technologies that are being embedded in the electronic medical record to flag certain aspects of patient care. But we're just really at the beginning of what I think is going to be a revolution and a disruption in that interaction between the provider and the patient. And I use disruption in a good way, in a positive way, because I think we have the opportunity to make those interactions and to make management significantly better. This is essentially Tempest. We take different modes of data, whether it be molecular, clinical, imaging. Imaging includes both pathology and radiology. We put it into the multimodal database, and we can provide that data to providers. We can build AI tools with it, and we work with many life science companies essentially to help them develop drugs more efficiently, drugs or other products more efficiently. And this was really the vision from the beginning. The founders, Eric and Ryan, had this sense that if not only could we offer diagnostics, but if along with those diagnostics, if we could collect the data, all of a sudden those results become much more meaningful and impactful to help drive the best decisions possible for patients. In terms of size, Tempest now is no longer a small company. I'll draw your attention though to the middle column here in terms of the data. It's now over 200 petabytes. It's 7 million de-identified records. To put it in scope, for those of you who are familiar with TCGA, it's more than 50 times the size of TCGA, and it involves over 2,500 institutions in the US that are connected to Tempest and exchanging data on a regular basis. And so you can begin to think or imagine with that kind of database in oncology, what type of answers you can begin to provide and what type of questions you can begin to answer. Here's some examples, or here's how we try to we look at what we have. So at the bottom of this graphic are the data. Again, be it molecular or clinical data through EHR integration or imaging data, including now, by the way, products in cardiology, one FDA approved looking at electrocardiograms. But we turn those, more importantly, data sets into insights that drive treatment selection, that drive care pathway intelligence, that drive clinical trial matching and research insights. And then those get converted into usable software, hopefully very easy to use. And I've shown you 3 examples up here, or really 4 examples. The first is Next, which is really care pathway intelligence. Next identifies care gaps for an individual patient based on their molecular profile, their clinical data, and the available guidelines to notify providers that a patient may be appropriate for a specific diagnostic or a specific test that has yet to be ordered. The real world example is early stage non-small cell lung cancer. One of the real world examples, early stage non-small cell lung cancer, where an EGFR inhibitor called osimertinib has been approved and has demonstrated an 80% improvement in survival when used after curative intent therapy. And so we've deployed Next to notify providers that here's an early stage non-small cell lung cancer. They've been treated with curative intent, and the FDA and the NCCN suggest that this patient should be tested molecular. Their tumor should be tested molecularly, and we've had quite a bit of success deploying that. The next one is called Pixel. Pixel is the radiomics, so it can track the size of a nodule, and you can imagine that that would be quite useful for patients on therapy to see whether that lesion is getting smaller or larger. And in fact, we can use that in the context of clinical trials to see whether a drug or the intervention is working. And then right next to that is Lens. Lens is basically what we call our database. Here are the 7 million plus patients. About 250,000 of those have DNA, RNA, and very good, or actually excellent, clinical annotation. And we can begin to ask questions through the AI. And now it becomes very easy to interrogate this database. I have an example question there. How many patients with KRAS have I seen? Or you could ask how many patients with KRAS mutations are in the database. And within seconds, you get an answer, but it can get much more sophisticated than that. How many patients with KRAS mutations in this specific disease, in this line of therapy, who have received this drug, and how have they done? What are the other molecular features of this patient group? And I can tell you that for almost every query, we will have the largest collection of patients available, I dare say, in the world. Let me go through, if you don't mind, Brad. I'll go through the slides and then take questions if that's okay. And hopefully I'm not rambling too much.
No, that's perfect. And I'll help call on the people,
Great,
raise their
great.
hands or pull questions from the chat for you.
Yeah, because don't worry, we'll have plenty of time for questions. So in terms of intelligent patient matching, here's where I think really one of the tools that the AI is going to be especially relevant to patient management. We call this Tempest Link. We all know that the number of adult patients who get on clinical trials in this country is abysmal. It's the best estimates are about 7%. The realistic estimates are probably about 3%. We also, at the same time, we realize that the only way we're going to make progress in oncology is through clinical trials. That's the only way that new interventions get approved. And that number has to get much better. So we introduced this called Tempest Link, where we can enter the eligibility criteria for a clinical trial, match it to the patients in an institution's electronic medical record, and with a team of nurse navigators, notify the site that there is a patient at their institution that would be eligible for a trial at their institution in an effort to try to improve clinical trial accrual. And I can tell you that that's been quite successful in the centers where we've integrated that. Here's Lens. I won't belabor it because I've already spoken about it, but here's another example of a question that one could ask of the database. All melanoma patients include any patients with the tests XT, XF. You don't even have to enter that if you don't know the name of the tests. You could enter DNA tests, RNA tests, whatever you want. You can exclude patients who have had specific tests or other conditions. And you can see that it gives you line of therapy, it gives you certain demographics, it gives you the primary diagnosis. If I had the full demo, I could show you that it tracks survival. It shows you what other treatments they've received. It shows you the other molecular alterations that are present in that group. And so you can begin to understand that this would be quite useful for hypothesis generation, for research collaborations, and even for joint publication. Here's next. Again, talked about it, so I won't belabor it. Here's the non-small cell lung cancer example at the top. There's BRCA in the middle, and what you don't see is a deployment in metastatic breast cancer around HER2. So we're working through multiple care gaps at a time. Obviously, all of these can be deployed at an institution at any one time. And so lastly, I just want to play this video because this is really what I think is going to be most disruptive in the next few years, and that is a patient-facing app. So bear with me; it's about a minute and a half, 2-minute video.
The past few weeks were a whirlwind. Doctor's appointments, tests, and anxious waiting. Now the doctor was saying the dreaded words. You have cancer. The days that followed came with a barrage of appointments and procedures. But amid the uncertainty, she wasn't alone.
Olivia, please connect with my provider for my medical records. Olivia, can you help me prepare for my upcoming oncology appointment? Options. Olivia, Is there a clinical trial I should consider? What does a complete response mean? Thank you.
Enhanced by AI, Olivia empowers patients to access and organize their medical records, manage their health, and receive personalized insights. Imagine a world where every patient has the world of medical information tailored to their own unique journey at their fingertips. A world where no patient feels alone. A world with Olivia.
Oops. I think, yeah. All right. So I'll stop sharing because that was my last slide. And yeah, so we're very excited about it. I think I think it really will be, this type of technology really will be incredibly disruptive to that interaction. But again, disruptive in a good way, because until really the present time, it has been the healthcare industrial complex that has owned these records, but they really are the patients. The patients should have them, and here are now the next generation of apps that will allow patients to control their healthcare journey in a much more meaningful way. So I'll stop there, and hopefully that stimulated some questions and a robust discussion. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Ezra. So as people have questions, use the raise hand feature and I'll call on you. I'll just get us started. Was that Olivia product? Is that a mock-up of something, or is that a real product out there?
That's a real product. It's in beta testing right now. So we've invited people. Right now it's by invitation only to sign up. If there are people interested, I'm happy to collect those names, and I can give them to the team that's developing Olivia. But right now it's by invitation only, because really there's going to be kinks. We're not under any impression that this is the perfect app. And so right now we want people to test it, to use it, and tell us what's wrong with it. We'll probably do that for the next 6 months, and then our plan is to launch it widely.
So, and just one other thing, you had your very provocative title. Can you just speak to that a little bit? What do you see shifting in the relationship? Eric Topol says something like, the patient will see you now, just to be provocative. What's your elaboration on how you see the relationship between patients, caregivers, and providers evolving with the advent of increasingly powerful AI?
Yeah, so I think it'll be more patient driven, even more than it is now. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in just a moment. But it also really will depend on what the patient wants. And there's no doubt that there'll be a large segment of the patient population that wants to continue the interaction with their provider as it is now. And that's terrific. That's fine. So there will be a lot of the caregiver patient provider interaction that will not change. But to get to your question, I think most people will begin to either rapidly or slowly embrace these technologies depending on their personality. And I think it'll change that interaction from in every aspect. So first, I think patients will come into their visits a lot more prepared, and we saw some examples of what one could ask the app like Olivia. And this will be preparation that goes a step further than the typical Google search, because it will be relevant to their specific case and backed up by by real data, not by everything available on the internet, that can sometimes be not only misleading but even border on dangerous. I think we've all seen examples of that. So they'll come into their visit a lot more prepared. Then at that visit, the physician will be armed with the data that is specific and the information that is specific to that patient. You made the comment that it is, and there was actually a really nice article in the Wall Street Journal a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, some of you may have read it, really speaking to this issue that there is no way that a physician can now be prepared with all the medical information that they need to know. It's just impossible. To put it into perspective, I'm still a practicing medical oncologist. I see patients half a day a week at Moores Cancer Center in San Diego. I see about 90% of my patients have head and neck cancer. And I have trouble keeping up with what's going on in head and neck cancer. I can't imagine what a community oncologist has to do to try and keep up with colorectal cancer, breast cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, prostate, et cetera, let alone head and neck cancer. So I have trouble keeping up with a sliver of the oncology world. What does a community oncologist do? It's impossible. And so now the AI can all of a sudden produce the relevant information for the patient that provider is about to go see. So they can the AI can send notifications with respect to, hey, there's a drug-drug interaction here that you need to be aware of. The guidelines suggest that this patient should be tested for, whatever. Their latest electrocardiogram showed them at risk for an MI within the next year. Consider referring them to a cardiologist or consider this relevant testing. So that's the next part. The physician is going to be better armed with specifics to that patient. And then that patient visit is going to be tracked and recorded in a much more concise way. Right now, I can tell you, physician notes are incomplete, incomplete at best, and terrible at worst. We have a hard time capturing all the relevant data, because what happens is you interact with the patient, you ask them all of these questions, and you try to remember what to write down. And so much of that interaction is lost. But now, in the future, actually it is now, because there are tools already in place to do this, that interaction can be tracked by an AI, and the AIs are getting more and more sophisticated to be able to pull down all the relevant information and create the note that the physician has to edit. Then, with other tools, and Tempus isn't developing these, but patients can be armed with tools to report their symptoms in real time that can be tracked over time. And those patient-reported outcome tools, be they wearables, I'm not wearing mine right now, but be they wearables or interactive tracking, those can be conveyed right to the healthcare system or to the provider, and the providers can be notified that, hey, Miss Jones is moving a lot less, is a lot less mobile than she was a week ago. And so one of the healthcare team members can call Miss Jones and say, hey, are you okay? Everything going all right? Well, I don't feel so well, or I'm getting more tired from my radiation or from my chemotherapy. And there are data showing that you can actually avert hospitalizations or other outcomes, other negative outcomes, by doing that. So, long-winded answer, but we're gonna have AI across the entire spectrum of those patient visits that are going to dramatically change how we approach patients.
I can't help myself, Ezra. You've probably said notifications to doctors at least half a dozen times. And so if they're already stressed and struggling keeping up to that community oncologist, now Tempus is giving me 6 notifications a day that I need to. Actually, doctors don't like notifications. They have to do something with a notification, and they're busy. So can you speak to that aspect of overwhelming with notifications from the AI?
So we are highly attuned to that, because you're absolutely right. There's fatigue. I mean, I experience it now, and you guys are going to think I'm a terrible doctor after after this, but there are many notifications that Epic gives me that I just ignore, because it's just too much, and I've sort of learned the ones that I need to pay attention to and the ones that I don't. But AI can help there as well. So there's two things. So first, it doesn't have to be the physician that's notified. It can be anybody in the system, that the institution designates. And so you can have a nurse, a PA, whatever, get those notifications and decide which ones are important to take forward and which ones they can handle themselves. So absolutely right. The last thing we want to do is add more to the physician's plate so that they burn out even faster than they burn out now. The second thing is that the AI can begin to prioritize those notifications. And if barriers are lifted, actually, and this is in the future, this doesn't happen now because there's regulatory issues to deal with, but the AI can begin to enact management plans or actual management that will not need a provider or a human to be involved with. And then the third thing I would say is, just like any technology, at first, there'll be a learning curve and without a doubt, some extra work. But in the long run, as we begin to learn how to use it, it'll actually save a tremendous amount of work. And you can think of, it doesn't even have to be a medical technology. Think about the first laptop or the first personal computer that you got. You had to learn how to use it. The first iPhone or sorry, the smartphone, you had to learn how to use it. And that took a little bit of extra effort, but now how much time does that save you? So
Eric, you're up first in the raised hand feature.
Sounds great. I mean, I want to continue with the theme that sort of Brad opened up and you've been addressing in the last few minutes about workforce readiness for this and all the other changes that are coming and the keeping up problem. I mean, I have a sort of near-term question. As people adopt these tools in oncology practices today, what is your training and integration service or system like? How long does it take for them to get good at it? And what changes to their workflow do they have to do? And my longer-term question is, 10 years out, when these things are at scale, are there still specialists, or does everybody train to be good at analytics and AI savviness and a certain amount of medical knowledge, and the AI becomes the specialist? Like, what are the implications long term so that we could design a workforce for where the puck is going to embrace these technologies and use them well?
yeah. And by the way, I'd love to hear what the group thinks. I don't want to do all the talking because these are I love these questions. Answer to the first is, we work incredibly closely with the healthcare system when we deploy these tools, and we do that for several months. In fact, if you have an opportunity, and if I can, I'll send you the link, Brad. We had a webinar on the next program probably about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, with the precision medicine person at TriHealth. That's a health system in Ohio that put it in place. And Karen, who was there, the officer designated to do this, described very nicely the hurdles that they experiences, the problems, and how they did that. But we worked incredibly closely with them. And this was, sort of still in beta testing. We've gotten a lot better at anticipating problems. But you're absolutely right. We have to work there. There's sort of a period of time where a product gets launched where people have to learn how to use it. And I think if it's Tempest or any other AI company, we have responsibility to do that. The second question is a bit more provocative. You know, what does the future look like in terms of the workforce? I can envision a day, and that day is not tomorrow. It's not next year. It's not even, you know, in 2 years. But I can envision a day where AIs get better and better and better in all aspects, and where providers actually do only the very high level, sophisticated interaction. Some of that interaction will be with the AI exclusively. Some of that interaction will be with the patient and caregivers. But I don't think humans will ever be completely out of the process. But I think the level of interaction will change dramatically. What does that mean for the workforce? Uh, I I actually think we'll hopefully need, and this is um, uh, maybe I hope I'm not being offensive to people, but I actually think we'll need fewer and fewer physicians. We have we don't have enough physicians right now, right? And so I think we won't need as many physicians in total. Believe it or not, I don't even think we'll need as many surgeons or specialists that are now tied to a procedure. I think even I actually envision that in the future, even procedures will be done by AI, and physicians will play they'll play an important role. I don't want to diminish the importance, but they'll play a much less involved role, even in surgeries, even in you know, biopsies or you know, what interventional radiologists and pulmonologists do now. Um, uh, Again, not tomorrow, but I could see that. I could actually see that in a decade.
Thank you. Eric, did you get all your questions answered? Okay. Brian, you're up next.
I'll just pick up on that theme. So congratulations, Ezra. This is a huge step forward. It was actually one of my first questions when I saw the second slide show up. Is like, where's the patient involved in this whole thing? And so you answered at the end. So it's a great job. So as we talk about workflow, I mean, what I see happening here is that decision support is just being massively upgraded. And so the amount of time it's taken at that step in the workflow is going to be diminished. Then you move into like drug access. And so I've got sort of like two questions on that front. What are you doing to help the patient and the providers to expedite the uh, the challenges of access to drugs?
Yeah.
So you could have, for example, you could have like a rank order of like what's the effectiveness of, you know, these 5 drugs, and then what's the ability to actually get access to those 5 drugs and rank order them that way. And that can account for clinical trials, off-label, you know, dollars available to the patient. So where do the insurance companies come into
Yeah.
play, and, you know, the McKessons, and, you know, I mean, I know you guys are solving the first step was huge, massive. But like I'm going through this, and I've gone through it a jillion times. Access.
I, I love the question.
Yeah,
'cause
hey
it,
Patty.
Hey, what's going on?
Did you
Can somebody mute? There you go.
it's such, I love the question because it is something, you know, quite frankly, that we struggle with. And I don't have a great answer, but I'll tell you what we're doing. And what, you know, what others might be thinking about. In a nutshell, what you're saying is we can develop all these great tools to come to the best decision for that patient at that time. But if we can't implement it, then who cares? Right? Then it's just, okay, you should be treated with this drug. It's not available. Too bad. And that's even a more frustrating scenario, right? Than we have. So what are we doing? Right now, the structure of our health system and many health systems, you know, around the world are, somebody has to, you know, pay for it, and that payment has to be approved by some authority. In some countries, it's the national health system. In the United States, it's the payer. So we can help with that in a relatively small way by creating an AI, which we did, that helps providers write those letters. Those letters are time consuming. They have to pull in a lot of information from the EMR. They have to pull in information from PubMed or guidelines or other sources to support the claim. And I can tell you from doing this, those letters can take 30 to 60 minutes to write, where an AI can literally do it in 30 seconds. So at least we can shift the burden, and then obviously the provider has to edit that record, edit that letter, and make sure it's appropriate. But at least that's one thing to address the current structure of the system. But now let's say, and we're doing this, let's say we begin to work with insurers, we begin to work with pharmacies, with large healthcare providers or systems like United Health. And we can begin to look at data to optimize treatment in a much better fashion than we do now. So every health insurer has some sort of flow or algorithm on how to treat patients. A lot of that is based on NCCN. Some of them are internally created, but they have something. But they're not individual. They're not individual to the patient. Let's say we got to a day, and we're going to be at that day, where we can take that individual patient's current state, put them in the context of millions of records, if not tens of millions of records, and say, hey, this is actually the next best treatment for the patient. And we can tell the health insurer that this will save you money down the road because of this and this and this. They actually become cost effective. And and I think we will, shift to a value-based system rather than a sort of pay-as-you-play system that we have now, that will be incredibly attractive to everybody. But that value-based system right now, if we were to implement it, is based on pretty terrible data. And a lot of it is guessing. Now, what if we had that based on real data from millions, potentially hundreds of millions of data points, that could really be much more predictive of how that individual will do rather than a population will do. And we'll get there. So that I think is going to be the big step to address what you're saying, because then it'll be, from the insurer point of view, I want to do this because it's going to save me money down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there are others that have their hands raised, so I'm going to give them the floor. But I would just say the sooner that you can bring the payers into this and get them to see you as a trusted source, the easier that process will be. Get them in on the front end. I'm sure you guys know that and are already working on it, but it seems like a logical step.
I have a call with the CMO of United Healthcare next week.
There you go. All right.
So, yeah.
Sounds good. I got other questions. I'll come back if we've got time.
All right. Cindy, you're next.
Hi. Ezra, thanks for a great presentation. It was really compelling, both on a practical level and conceptually. Two areas that I'm wondering about. So this one that others have brought up, the same thread. I think the payers are the easier group to convince. In terms of the doctors, and I've done plenty of work consulting sort of around patient engagement with physicians and ancillary staff, it's helping them to figure out what their new role is. And I'm wondering if you have done any kind of focus groups with physicians, because like I had an appointment with my physician today, and if I would have brought like a list of the AI generated possibilities, he would have either stroked out or it was telehealth. The connection would have been cut somehow mysteriously, because first of all, it takes away, what is he going to do if I'm coming in with, it makes him sort of, in his mind, potentially a monkey. Like, what is he just supposed to choose from?
Superfluous, yeah.
So I'm sure you've thought about, this can't be the first time this has been raised, and you've thought about that. So maybe it doesn't even need to be responded to here, because there are others who want to talk. But implementing this, as others have said, is going to be the really interesting thing. AI is here to stay. So the pressure of that will make it happen, but the question is how. So that's one. Here's really what I want to maybe ask you to respond to. What I call lifestyle management. So I have a company that looks at how lifestyle data-driven research, peer-reviewed lifestyle management research can actually improve patient outcomes. So I'm talking about exercise, nutrition, stress reduction, and I don't see that like on the Olivia system. I'm wondering if you've thought about, why not put exercise in there? Because there's really research that says, and more, and you know what there are targets from national organizations of how much zone 2 exercise, blah, blah, nutrition. Wouldn't you want to put that in there as part of best practices?
Great points. So for the first, the answer is yes. We definitely engage, let's say, constituents when we develop any product. We probably need to do a better job doing that. There's only 24 hours in the day, and Tempest doesn't have 20,000 employees yet. But we try to do the best job we can, because we understand that these technologies are different. They're going to change patterns. They're going to change the flow of a practice, and we want to get that input as early as possible, so that we can make any changes to the product that will allow that use and that implementation as smoothly as possible. The last thing we want to do, for sure, because it would be self-defeating, is introduce a product and have physicians come back and tell us they hate us. And get offended by it. So we try to do that as much as possible. We probably can do even a better job, but the answer is yes. For the second, I would say crawl, walk, run. So right now we're crawling with Olivia. This is our first attempt at a patient-facing app. We've thought about what you said, for sure. I think that's going to be a version down the road. It's not that I disagree with you. I think the things that you're bringing out are incredibly important to the health of a patient with any condition. But it takes another level of technology to bring those things in, and we will eventually do that. We won't have it in version 1.
Thank you. All right, Elaine, you're next.
Yeah, I've got more patient-focused questions. So if you don't want to wait on your physician to start using these AI tools, and you want to get all of your data into Tempest, do you go with the largest institution that's using Epic that has most of your records? Or do you go with a small hometown oncologist who maybe can get at it easier and more nimbly? And then the second question is, for the rare cancers, of which I'm one, how is the research that Tempest is doing benefiting those rare cancers? Thank you.
Yeah, I love that question, because we're literally just had a major meeting about that on Thursday at the CTOS meeting, the international meeting for sarcoma, which every sarcoma is a rare cancer by definition. So I'll get to the second question in a second. The first question is what I would on a personal advice level. I think still the most important thing, more important than AI, more important than any technology, is be comfortable with your provider. If you have a provider that you're not comfortable asking questions, or you feel that they're not giving you the information, or the converse, you have to be comfortable asking any question, no matter what it is, with that person. And that's the most important part of the interaction. It doesn't matter, what their practice setting is. It doesn't matter what technology they have. It doesn't matter, what their group is. The most important thing is that comfort level, and I truly believe that drives the best outcomes possible. Having said that, there are I would say that every institution and every practice is going to adopt this to some degree. Well, first of all, you have to have an EMR. That's the law. But secondly, these types of tools that are embedded in the EMR are going to be adopted in the short term, in the next few years, in one way or another. But again, it comes back to as you interact with your provider, if you think things are falling short, or if you think that there are tools that could be utilized, I would encourage you to bring it up. And if you have a good provider, they'll be open to it. If they're not open to it, I'd ask them, why aren't you? And begin to wonder about that. The second part, rare cancers. What I say to that, and I didn't make it up. It was I stole this from Rizal Kurzrock, who's a brilliant oncologist at Medical College of Wisconsin. She used to say, rare cancers are rare until you begin to realize that 25% of oncology is rare cancers. So everybody focuses on the top four: lung, breast, prostate, colorectal. But a quarter of oncology are, what we call rare cancers. And so what are we doing there? We are aligning with different groups on these rare cancers to become, at the very least, the sequencer of choice. But what that means is that we begin to amass a database. And one of the biggest challenges in research for rare cancers is that there aren't data. That nobody has, because by definition they're rare. Nobody has a collection, a meaningful collection of patients tied to molecular data, tied to outcomes, that we can begin to ask real questions about. And that's what we're going to do. So we've started that with a consortium of people interested in a carcinoma called NUT, NUT, incredibly rare. But we already have the largest database in existence for NUT carcinomas, and we're making that available to researchers in this consortium to begin to ask critical questions. At the sarcoma meeting, we began talking to the two largest sarcoma research organizations to begin to develop the same database for sarcoma. And with that power, actually, these databases get large in a very short period of time. And with that power, we can hopefully begin to impact research in a positive way. I hope that answers your question, Elaine.
It did. And just a follow-up, are there any institutions that Tempus is sort of trialing, doing a trial of your tools that maybe patients could participate in, or focus on those institutions?
A lot, too many to list. I mean,
we're Mayo. How about Mayo?
Mayo, we have some interaction with. Mayo has their own internal tools that they prefer to use. So we don't embed with Mayo as much as some others. But I honestly, I don't want to skew the audience or make recommendations in terms of institutions. We are connected to, as I said, 2,500 institutions around the country in one way or another. There are some institutions that work very closely with us. Yeah. So if you don't mind, Elaine, I'll sort of leave it at there. I don't want to bias. I don't want to bias people.
Yeah, and I get it. The bigger places probably are developing their own AI tools, right? And
I would say a lot of the big places work very closely with us. A lot of the big places.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
I mean, institutions that you would are household names. Yeah.
Thank you. Kay Coleman, you're next.
Good morning, Ezra. Good to see you.
Hey, Kay, great to see you.
Thank you for taking your time to talk to us this morning. For those of you on the East Coast, it's afternoon, I understand. also have a question that's pretty much self-centered in the sense that as you were going through the Olivia example, I was thinking, oh, how great would that be if somebody could pull all your medical records together from all the different kinds of physicians you see and your lab work and identify a potential problem before it happens. Is it just for cancer patients in treatment, or can it be applied to other medical issues? And I'll let you answer, and then I'll have a secondary question.
So it can be, it's available for any patient. The embedded AI tools are geared towards right now cancer, cardiology, and neuropsych. You can upload the records and search them irrespective of the diagnosis that the patient has. But the more sophisticated tools may not serve that individual that well at this point.
Just in my own example, I visited the ER. I had back pain. They noticed my blood pressure was really high. 3 days later, I saw my PCP and we had labs. I had high blood sugar. And then 2 days later, I had a stroke. So there was no one there looking at all the different things that were happening to me to prepare me or warn me or whatever. And so I feel like that was a real medical miss.
Yeah.
And being prescribed a high dose of a steroid shot me into stroke zone. So I see the value because no doctor can pull all that together.
Right.
And I'm just wondering how long before we have something like that that's useful to all patients, no matter what their underlying medical condition is.
And look, that's our ultimate goal, and I think we'll get there. In terms of timeline, unfortunately, I think we're still at the very least many months, if not a few years before that ideal. But Kay, we'll get there. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Brian, you have another question. We're coming to the hour, so I'm going to start to try and wrap things down out of respect for everyone's time. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah. So Ezra, molecular data can be interpreted many different ways in terms of different treatments. So I can go to Tempus, I can go to Boston Gene, I can go, Foundation, whatever, and I can literally get 3 different answers where there's no overlap in the Venn. How are you guys looking at that problem?
Yeah. So, thanks for pointing out some of our competitors.
Sorry.
I'm joking.
It's the world, right? Yeah.
No, I'm being completely facetious.
Yeah.
So I would say from an analytic perspective, that happens rarely now. If you went back 10 years ago, I would say analytic perspective, that was happening. But now the sequencing, the bioinformatics has gotten so routine that I would and we've looked at this, although not in the thousands, but certainly in the dozens, if not hundreds. If a provider order a test from let's say those 3 companies, you're almost certainly going to get the same results. Now, the interpretation or the second level from those results may be different. The FDA approvals, I think those are pretty standard, but we, for instance, provide a listing of clinical trials prioritized by geography. Those may be quite different because we may be using different databases and different ways to interpret those databases. The secondary sort of alterations that don't necessarily have an FDA-approved treatment but may have a suggested therapeutic, those may be different. And the best thing I can say is for a provider, I think they need to look at what they believe are the best responses and coming from the companies. Obviously, we feel very confident in what we're delivering. From a patient perspective, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to look at that output and really understand, is this the best answer available? At Tempest, we try to do that. We try to make it readable, easily to understand, but it's still, yeah, that second and tertiary level data interpretation, that's still going to be different.
Yep.
Okay.
I was just gonna.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you've got a captive audience here. We're all pretty plugged in as patients. If you guys ever want to reach out to us for insights from our patients on product development, roadmap, etc., I'm sure you're not going to find any shortage of opinions on how to help you guys. You're amazing effort, really amazing.
That would be wonderful.
You know how to reach me.
Yeah, yeah.
Ezra, just a wrap-up question then, for you to think about any key points you want to leave us with. But I also wanted to ask you about one of the things I've really enjoyed about Tempus is that you're constantly pushing the envelope on adding new diagnostics, whereas others might be comfortable printing money with the tests that they've had that have been approved and are successful. But you're always pushing into new areas. What are some of those new frontiers? What's next? And at another point at the outset, you listed the kinds of data you had, and it was classic medical data. Didn't include wearables data, didn't include consumer data. I think there's a lot of signal potentially if you had consumer data. So anyway, just sort of talk about the future and what you see, what's next.
Yeah, so the next thing on the horizon, and we're not the only ones, thinking this way, but we're making a big investment, is whole genome, somatic and whole genome germline. Some of you may have read we purchased Ambry last Monday, and so we feel very strongly that there's so much information that's being missed right now in the hotspot sequencing or the limited sequencing. And that we're going to hopefully uncover with whole genome. It'll take time, without a doubt. We'll have to, build those databases and begin to understand the biology. But we're sequencing a small fraction of the information embedded in our DNA. And so the answer to your first question is whole genome. In terms of those other aspects of health data, couldn't agree with you more. We do not do that. Right now we abstract using large language models and humans from the medical record. But just as doing a 683 gene panel versus whole genome, getting information only from the medical record and not from all those other things that you mentioned is just looking at a small component of what's going on. We need to do that. We need to embed those. We're not there yet. That is in I would say the near-term future, but not the immediate future.
Right. Thank you very much again, Ezra. Just wrapping here, any other final words of wisdom?
This has been great, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. I would say fasten your seatbelts because things are changing so fast. It's amazing, and it's personally it's fun to be a part of it.
Okay.